In this lesson, we're going to get started with our project. The first thing we'll do is show a sprite on the screen. That will be our hello world for this project. I'm going to go through some of the basics of a project in Quintus as well. So let me first show you the folder structure of our project. There's a file called index.html, that's the entry point of the game. There's a folder called lib that has all of the Quintus library that you can download from GitHub. There's a folder called images where I'm keeping all of the images for the game, and a folder called audio, that's where the sound effects will go. In index.html we start by creating an almost empty HTML document. I've added a viewport meta tag. What this does, it disallows scaling. So if you're viewing this on a phone, having this tag will make it so that the user can't pinch in or out to zoom. Then I'm including all of the Quintus files that I want to have in this game. See how I've painted the body black? That's because the game is not going to use all of the screen space. So I want the background to be black instead of white. I just think it looks better that way. And I'm also getting rid of some default margins and borders that the browser might be coming with. Below there's a script tag. You could have this code either in a script tag here, or you could append you could put it all in a separate JavaScript file. Just for simplicity for this course, I've put it in a script tag, but in general it's better if you add things in external files. See how I'm listening for the load event. I'm waiting for all of the page for the document to be loaded in the browser before getting started with the game. So after everything is loaded up, I'm good to begin. And I'm gonna begin by creating a variable called Q. This object will keep all of the frameworks. Will keep the framework main object so that I can refer to it in the different parts of the code. I would also like this Q variable to be available on the console, so that if I type Q on my browser's console, I could access it. So if I want to do that, one way of doing that is putting that in window as well, because everything you put in window will be, you can access that on the console of your web browser. Now let's initiate the framework. I'm gonna set this in a development mode, and all that does, it will prevent the browser from caching the images that I load. So if I'm now using development mode and I load an image, and if I change that image in the future, it might happen that the browser will show me the caged version of the image, not the final one. So I want to have this in development mode just to prevent that from happening altogether. And next I need to include some of the modules. So for now we'll be using two modules, a module called sprites and a module called scenes. Sprites takes care of the sprite images, style sheets, having all of the, it has everything related to those images that you put on the screen. And you can find the source code in Quintus_sprites. I recommend that you take a look at the source code of the modules we use. At first it might seem very complex, but as you move along on your project, you get used to where things are, and the code should be your first source if there's anything you're not sure about. I'm also including scenes, and we're going to talk about the concept of stages and scenes, but let's get this part over with first. I'm going to set up the game, and I need to enter the size of the game. So the background image I want to place is 1080 pixels wide, and it has a height of 720 pixels. Now, before being able to show that image, I need to preload the assets. Quintus requires you to preload all of the image files and then you begin the game. That makes a lot of sense because you don't want to have your game started while everything is not ready for you to use. So I'm going to load a couple of files here. We're only going to show one of those in this lesson. When you load things like this in Quintus in a string with comma separated, that's just one way of doing it. I'm doing it here too, but Quintus also allows you to enter these things in arrays. Now I have a callback function. This function will be called after everything has been loaded, and that's when I'm gonna stage the scene, a scene called level. Now, what's a stage and what's a scene? Think of a theater. You go to a theater. The stage is what you see. It's where the things are happening. In here, you can have many stages. Some will be behind. They will have an index. So the one with the higher index will be on top of the rest. And scenes are the instructions of what happens in the stage. A scene has to do with which sprite is placed where there's going to be a tile sheet. Everything that happens on the stage comes in the scene instructions. And we create a scene by typing q.scene and I give it a name. So see, that's the scene I'm loading is the one that I'm just creating now. And the callback function of a scene has the stage as a parameter. So the next step would be to create sprites and place them on the stage. If you just create a sprite, it's not going to show anywhere. You create the sprite and then you place it on the screen. And then we'll finally get our image showing. Let's create that first sprite. I'll call it sprite 1. And I'm going to create it as a new sprite class. Quintus has its own way of dealing with classes that allows you to create classes like instances of classes like this. Location of the sprite. When you place a sprite, the coordinates that you enter are those of the center of the sprite. So this background of the level, I want it to be placed at the very center of the game. So the x is going to be half of that value up there, and y is going to be that location as well. The asset image that I'm using is background.png, which is the one we previously loaded. Now let's insert that onto our stage and see it shown on the screen. Now that's a very big background. See how I can't even fit that on the small browser screen. What's going to happen if I'm on a very small phone that has a low resolution, or if I'm in an older computer that can't display that image, or if I just want to work like this. This is how I usually like working with the browser on the side. Well, there's an option to scale the image, to scale the entire game so that it fits the available space. That option has to be entered here in the setup part, and it's called scale to fit. If I add scale fit to fit true and I reload the game, it will rescale the game so that it fits on my screen. Now the coordinates and the width and the height, we are still going to work with this. This is actually being shrinked by using responsive design techniques. So you scale it, but you still have to work with the actual coordinates in the game. Otherwise, it would be a real mess. It would be really difficult to work with a game like that. So we've covered a lot of ground for this first apply hands-on lesson, but I'm pretty sure that if you follow along, you're able now to show sprites on the screen. Let's summarize what we did. We included the corresponding library files. We wait for the load event to be triggered so that our document is ready for us to access. We create a variable where we keep the Quintus, where we initiate Quintus, and we are able to access everything through this variable, like here, and whatnot. When we initiate the framework, we include the modules that we want to use, and we can enter setup parameters for the game. Then we'll wait for the assets to be loaded, and once they're loaded, the staging scene process takes place. And that basically consists on putting things on a stage. You could have many stages at the same time, and then they'll be disconnected from each other, and you could put sprites on the different ones. To create a sprite, we just create an instance of the sprite class. You need to give it, there's a lot of options for sprites. You can find those in Quintus_sprites, but some of the ones that we're using are, there's the coordinates which are really required, and you also have to enter the assets that's which image file is that sprite gonna use.